Hello, everyone, and welcome to Piloting the Future, a podcast brought to you by Energy Central. Here on Piloting the Future, we're going deep with the leaders, innovators, and forward thinkers responsible for not just imagining where our power future is headed, but building it day by day. In each episode, we go beyond the headlines and hear from the industry insiders and bold game-changing innovators to separate the hype from reality. So, Lee, we got another Piloting the Future episode. This one I'm really excited about because you know how we ask for listener input? Well, Vanessa Edmonds from Utility 2030 reached out and said, hey, Kim, I think you should do an episode on influencing beyond authority. And so today's episode is going to be on that topic, which I personally was excited about because as an innovation leader and manager, sometimes you don't always have a big team and you have to influence beyond your authority to get things moving. So with that being the topic du jour, Lee, do you have any fun stories to tell us about a time where you had to influence beyond authority in your days?
I do. I think it was back in 1987, just a few years after I graduated and started working for a computer company. And a buddy of mine quit and he left me a note saying nothing works. Nobody will do what I say, and our manager won't force people to do it. I give up, and he quits. And what I found then is that there was not enough power that my manager had over other employees in the company to make them write software that worked with the software that I was writing. And so I learned techniques. Like one person had a picture of their family on the desk. So I started a conversation about the family, and suddenly he was open to talking about how to get the job done. Somebody else I wrote the code for and then just showed it to them, and then they were willing to integrate it. Somebody else had M&M bags outside their office hanging up. So I bought her a bag of M&Ms, and that worked with that person. So each person had their own way to work with them, and you had to discover that. Some it was technical or how important it is to the company, and they really motivated them once they understood the bottom line. So you really have to find that, and I learned that very early in my career. Later when I was in charge of Smart Grid for San Diego Gas and Electric, I had 3 or 4 people, and I really had to get the whole company to make changes about how they did things. We had a portfolio of $500 million, over 5 years, and it was all about getting to know people and understanding what made them tick and what they were interested in order to get them on board, because there's no way you can get every VP to tell their employees they have to do Smart Grid. It's a cultural change and incredible lesson there leveraged. And then, Kim, I'm an advisor to you, and I have no ability to tell you what to do. So everything I do with you is convincing you, and without any authority, trying to influence some of the decisions that you make. But more often than not, you influence me.
Two-way street. Exactly. But no, thanks for sharing that, because I do think this will be a helpful episode for those of us who, especially today, we're feeling a little overwhelmed. There's less people to do more. And so we're all trying to use our influence beyond authority to get things done. Today, I'm excited to say that we're going to be joined by some amazing women who are senior leaders in a very, very, very tough role. So we're going to listen to them. They're driving customer-centric transformation inside of utilities, SMUD and Xcel. And we're going to have them in the cockpit today. So fasten your seatbelts. It's time to explore what happens when we learn how to use our influence to move ideas to impact.
First, I'd like to introduce Brandy Bolden, Chief Customer Officer at SMUD out in Sacramento. And we have Jody Allison, VP of Customer Transformation at Xcel. Welcome to Piloting the Future. It's exciting to have you both on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Excited to be here.
Yes, good morning.
So you two work together as part of Utility 2030. Jody, can you talk a little bit about what Utility 2030 is?
Yes, so super excited to share a little bit. And I know if Vanessa was able to be with us today, Vanessa Edmonds is the original founder. And Brandy and I have been fortunate enough to be involved in the organization on the board. And I think it's really focused on making sure that we are prepared for what is headed in the future for the utilities. And thinking about it in a creative and innovative way and getting together in smaller groups and really working on actionable material. So it's not just sitting in a conference, listening to a lot of people talk about different things. It's really working together collaboratively to figure out how we can implement those things, how we can get together and build on each other's capabilities and really accelerate what we're doing. I've also been very heavily involved in creating the leadership program for women. And it's we celebrate that with the Spark Awards. And we also have a curriculum that is for women in leadership, and it is called Radiate. And very excited about those two programs.
Hey, Lee, I was a former Spark Award winner. So yes, please apply, women. Next year, we need you.
Brandy, what skills do you feel are important to build as a leader, and how do you apply it at SMUD?
Wow, thank you. That's a great question. So when we think about leadership here at SMUD, we focus on core competencies around leadership and what that looks like. We call it our leadership competencies as part of our larger culture compass. And so when we think about leaders, the three main things that we look for in leaders are managing ambiguity, and someone being able to drive mission, vision, and purpose, and then strategic thinking. And I think those things are very core to leadership skills, both here at SMUD and beyond. And I can definitely see the tie-in where leading through influence or being able to influence others is a key part of those core competencies for success.
And Brandy, do you have an example of where you've used influence to help you lead?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in the Chief Customer Officer role here at SMUD for about 4 years, but in my previous life here at SMUD, I was actually a project manager for our smart meters project about 12 or 13 years ago. And as many of you know, in project management, you don't have necessarily direct reports, right? You have a matrix team of folks that don't report to you. So using and being able to influence and really lead folks that aren't direct reports, right? So it's not authority. It's actually being able to galvanize a team around a shared objective and move those objectives forward to meet your intended outcomes. And so that's definitely a time where I had to not only hone in on my skills around influence, but really elevate them, right? And really build that muscle, which really proved very effective both on the project and then after in subsequent roles after being a project manager. So
that's great. Jody, can you give an example from your career where you've led through influence?
So in my career, I've seen the power of influence in various forms. I learned very on that the power is in people. And the more people you can bring along for the ride with your ideas, they will add to your ideas, make them stronger, and you will be able to implement them a lot easier. And so I've had a varied career. I've worked in financial services and I've worked in the utility space. In financial services, I led an organization that had 40% turnover. Most people look at that as a huge challenge. I saw it as an opportunity to turn those people over internally and increase my network to continue to grow my ideas, grow the team's ideas through influence. I think in the utility space, I've seen where getting leaders on board to support innovative or transformative ideas, changing out a lot of systems or a lot of processes that people are using. I've seen the power of getting a few influential people involved so they carry those ideas to their teams instead of you having to take them to the teams. And that's worked really well.
So I'm going to switch this up just a little bit. It is a leadership topic, I believe. But everywhere I go today, every person I talk to, it seems like they're using artificial intelligence, AI, in order to get things done. I know personally, things that would normally take me a day or two are taking me a half an hour. And the work is very good. It's getting done. Is there a concept of leading an AI agent? Is that a leadership skill?
I think there is. I think there's a leadership quality that you need to have to be able to be open to the possibilities and the opportunities. I'll give an example. I'll actually give two examples. One is reading RFPs. Everybody loves to do that, right? That's the sleeper activity. But we know how critical it is, and the devil's in the detail. But I think from that perspective, we've been able to use AI to cut through that material in a much faster, much more efficient, much more effective way. And then when you think about the possibility of taking AI and actually leading intelligence instead of humans, it's like, again, it comes back to influence. It's how are you going to get the actual technology to interact with the humans to maximize the situation? So whether it's in a call center or whether it's in a back office, how do you leverage that relationship? And it really does draw on your leadership skills to find the ways to make people relate and see the opportunity. If they can't do that, it will struggle to take off.
Yeah. So, Brandy, what happens when you have a task like designing a new circuit and you have experts on your team that you've relied on for a long time, and now you're in a position where the AI is going to come up with the solution? How do you lead a mixed team of AI agents and humans?
That's an interesting question. I take a little bit different perspective on AI and the use of AI in the workplace. Is it a great tool for accelerating, what we call kind of busy or manual work? Absolutely. Can it provide us insights quickly so that we can take action? Absolutely. But there will never be a replacement for a human being able to, especially when it comes to dealing with end customers. Whether you're designing a circuit, there's this end customer in mind, right? There's always going to need to be that awareness, that empathy, things that you just can't necessarily teach an AI to do. So I think it's important, while leveraging and leading teams that consist of both, artificial intelligence and humans, it really comes down to maintaining a growth mindset. That's always leading with curiosity, being curious, asking questions, being able to extract those questions into learnings. Those are the type of skills that are needed in a place that's cohabitated, if you will, by both humans and artificial intelligence. And so I think these are things that we're going to have more conversations about. Change management. I think, Jody, you hit the ball out of the park there. I think what you were getting to is really change champions and building that strength within the organization. Because these are significant changes, and I think it's going to take everyone approaching it from that growth mindset, building those change champions in order to enact such a significant shift like a cohabitated workplace.
That kind of tees up my question, but first, change champions, amazing. We have to use that more often. Jody, talking about activating networks. Great advice, everybody. Work on your network. But change champions activating networks, whether those networks are going to be humans and agents in the future, right? Just part of the reality. I really want to talk about, Brandy, what you started to touch on around empathy, trust, collaboration, authenticity. So as I was preparing or being prepared for this future where there would be more of an AI-driven future, one of the skills that I was being encouraged to work on was being more of a servant leader, right? And so some of the skills that we as humans are going to really need to, I think, lean hard into, especially as we become leaders, there's more of how we become more servant leaders. And so in that discussion, things like empathy, trust, authenticity, it gets thrown around a lot. And especially for women, women are encouraged to be authentic leaders, right? But it's tough. And so I was wondering if you all could maybe share a little bit more of your insights around developing, curating some of these types of skills, and what do you think it means now for this blended workplace?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think I've definitely approached it from a certain vantage point of, being authentic. It did catch a little buzz. It's been a buzzword now for the last 4 years. I think in some cases it might be overused, because what we don't want to do is say that being authentic is 100% of what's going to kind of get you there. I think it's a balance of being authentic and having discernment when to engage authentically and when to not necessarily not engage authentically, but that measured, right? Because we love, of course, I bring my full self to work every single day, but I don't get up all the time having things go exactly the way I want them to, right? So there's a discernment that I'm still a leader. So despite me having a difficult morning, if you will, filled with challenges and all the things, I still have to show up for my team. I set the weather for the organization. If I have a stormy morning, I don't want everybody to have a stormy morning. I want them to have a sunny morning. So how do we do that? So that's the balance of authenticity and discernment. So I might show up with a little bit discernment to kind of bring myself from 10 to a 5, right? But then be authentic enough to share, hey y'all, I had a really tough morning this morning and I'm pulling it together. So it's that balance. I think that's really key. And I think, obviously as a woman in the workplace, there are still those, I would say those things that impact us a little bit differently. If we feel strongly about something, we have to make sure that we're not coming across as emotional, right? Because that word gets thrown around. I might be authentic, but I don't want to be too emotional. And so being aware of those, if you will, those norms still exist, and how do we navigate those? It takes a lot of understanding yourself, understanding your role, understanding your workplace. It also takes work in building your own self-confidence, and inner confidence and inner voice, and being in tune with that. And it is not something that happens overnight. It takes practice. It is a muscle that is built and exercised every day. And I'd like to think that it's not a destination, it's a journey. And every day is going to bring a different challenge or a different opportunity. So that's some of my insights around that. Again, delicate balancing act, but not impossible. And look forward to supporting other women in the workplace with the same challenges.
Brandy, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's the balance between leading self and leading others, right? When you show up as a leader, I look at it as the duck gliding across the pond. Maybe the little feet are going like crazy, but people don't see that. They see you glide. And so I think sometimes they will need to see you as who you are, and sometimes they need to see your confidence. So it's knowing the balance of showing up as self and showing up as the leader. And I think that to me is the authenticity that people are looking for, is anticipating, knowing what they need, understanding. And I think one of the things that questions I get is, when I'm in a leadership role, people are dealing with change on a daily basis. And someone gave me a tidbit once, and I keep passing it along. We all go through a change cycle. I use Sarah. She's my best friend. Shock, anger, anxiety, resistance, acceptance, or hope. Sarah. And we all go through that. And as leaders, when people are looking to us, where are they in that curve? Because we all go through it. We go forwards, we go backwards. What is it that I need to bring? And a lot of times we talk about empathy, and what does that empathy look like? So they understand the framework. They understand where in each of those do I need to show up as a leader. And I think that's really important. And if you can do that, people view that as authenticity as well. Like knowing how to respond. When someone's really angry, probably not the best time to talk over them. It's the time to listen. So it's really understanding not just how you show up, but how you respond.
I love the setting the weather analogy. I love the gliding duck analogy. Those are both fantastic. And I know we're talking about leadership, but looking back on my career, there have been times when I wasn't a leader, and there were times when other people were on teams, and they also need to learn that, because they can affect their teammates and even affect their management by setting the weather or showing how much work it's taking and not making it look like they're just gliding along. It's really a great skill for everybody to learn. I guess we're all leaders in one way or another. So leadership is a complex topic. Jody, can you talk about tools or frameworks or techniques that can help people get better, improve?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of tools out there, and I think everybody kind of gravitates towards what works for them. I think for me in the past, it's really focusing on frameworks or things that are easy for me to wrap my head around, whether it's Sarah, which I just mentioned, or it's crucial conversations. Communication is key, and you really have to understand how you are engaging with others, especially in crucial conversations, because that's when you really need to deliver, and it's going to be important, the outcomes of that. I've used Sendelani for culture. There's different books. I mean, I could go on and sound like a commercial, but I think my message would be is find something that resonates with you in that particular topic that you're looking to do some self-development in, and or use because you're dealing with a challenging situation, and keep revisiting it. Don't just try to absorb it once and hope it goes well. Like, keep revisiting it and test yourself, see how you're doing, and find somebody you can that can be a mentor to you, that may be able to observe you in environments and give you feedback. It's important. So I think change management, I could go on and on. I think people will talk about change fatigue. I think change leadership is what's needed. The world is going faster and faster than it ever has, and it will continue to go faster. So the thought that it's going to slow down is not realistic. And so we need to teach people how they are going to deal with all that's coming at them. And so I think change leadership, there's a lot of frameworks around change, whether it's Cotter, whether it's ADKAR, whatever you want to use, but just recognize that that's key to how we operate as a society today. Change is constant. It's moving faster, and we need to understand how to use different tools and frameworks to deal with it.
One of the change techniques I learned, I'll just throw it out there because you made me think about it. I haven't thought about it in a long time, is when somebody comes in with an emotional state, rather than trying to solve their problem for them, just acknowledge that state and let them talk about the solutions. And it really turned around my leadership capability, just learning that little thing. And my kids won't want to hear this, but it really changed my relationship with them. Instead of trying to solve their problems, I would just acknowledge their frustration and how they were feeling, and then let them figure it out. Magic. Brandy, what do you have to add to the conversation about tools, techniques, frameworks?
Well, you just provided a great example of one of Covey's 12 high trust behaviors. Listen first, right? So when we talk about tools, that's something that I definitely refer to. And in fact, I wish I had them here with me right now, but I have a deck of trust cards. And whenever there's a situation where we're being challenged in some way, I just pull out my cards and go, okay, what does this look like? How do I mend trust when it's been broken? How do we address either a situation where there's a question of respect or a question of lack of communication or those types of things? It's a great tool to use. We regularly engage in trust behavior conversations on my immediate leadership team and also as my executive team. So that's really our focus, is building trust in the organization, because when you have that, you can move a lot faster than you think you can, right? Similar to what Jody mentioned, we're leveraging ADKAR as well for change management, because the pace of change is rapid, as with anything. And then also, as I mentioned before, just really maintaining and cultivating a growth mindset, because those things, if you have trust, you're managing change, and you're approaching with a growth mindset, you can actually make the impossible possible.
I have also used journaling, and it was coming to my mind as I heard both Brandy and Jody speak, because sometimes when I'm in a difficult situation, I would spend time journaling about that situation or the person that I was having conflict with around crucial conversations. Jody was bringing that up, so important. And I would just journal until I realized what was my stake in that. I could then start to see what was my piece of the conflict or the trust issue that was happening. And so just spending sometimes journaling. Sometimes you don't always have a person that's there to listen, right? Sometimes leadership can be lonely. So sometimes you are kind of carrying some heavy weight, and you can't take it always to a friend, maybe sometimes a therapist. But Journaling really helped me through some of the toughest times get to some interesting revelations about myself and what I was bringing to the situation. Okay, but now we're going to move to the next segment, a visionary's take, and this is where we get right to the point. I like to say cut through the BS, get right to the point, and really start to think about how do we apply some of the learnings. And so for both Brandy and Jody, what I'm interested in this section, excited about, I really want to know, what do you think is really holding leaders back at utilities? I feel that leading change, transformation, innovation, whatever you want to call it, is so much harder at a regulated utility, other like Fortune 500 companies. Can you all share with me what you think really is holding leaders back at utilities and what we could be doing differently?
So I think for me, what's holding utility leaders back, and as I said, I've worked in different industries. I think for one, the industry as a whole is risk averse for very good reasons. It's about safety. And so I think there's always pause because we want to think about safety first. And so I think beyond that, I think the other thing that holds us back a little bit is our ability to collaborate. Sometimes I think we have an opportunity as organizations to collaborate both inside and outside our organizations more to drive to leverage different solutions. I think from my perspective, I think we have resources that we need to continue to push forward with, whether there are communities, our regulators, other peer utilities. That is something that's unique to this industry, and I don't think we leverage it enough. So I think if we could do more of that, I think we could drive things a little bit faster.
Yeah, I agree as well. Risk adversity is definitely something that we've all dealt with. I also think, and Jody tapped on this a little bit, silos within the organization, right? Conflicting priorities, right? So it's almost as if a lot of all of the different goals throughout the organization can't coexist. And we have to challenge that. And I think, again, it does go back to building trust and an understanding of how everyone and everyone's role within a utility is related, right? So when you think about why we're here to serve our customers. At the end of the day, that is what this is. Whether we are a vertically integrated utility or not, the end game is to serve reliable, hopefully affordable power to your end customer. And if everyone can galvanize around that one thing, no matter what their role is, all the way from folks working in power generation, line workers, CSRs, to the janitor that maintains or facilities that maintains the buildings. If we all agree that our end game is to do this one thing, you start to drop the silo, right? And you start to build, again, this is where trust comes in. If everybody understands what we're here to do, they're trusting each other to do their roles and do their parts, you move a lot faster and you can overcome significant change with that. If you think about the pandemic, everybody had one goal: to survive. And what happened on the utility side? We did what was ever necessary, right? We banded together. We all helped each other out. We were there for each other. We supported each other because the end goal was to survive, to get on the other side of this and continue to do our jobs. And so if we can kind of take a note from that, galvanizing around one clear thing, that really moves mountains in the end.
I love that. It sounds like, as you become more mission driven, we can really be better servant leaders, that we can move beyond the silo. So that is, putting it all together, mission driven, move beyond the silo as a servant leader. Before we move to Lee's hot seat, I have one more question. If there is any turbulence, so this is a tough job, not easy, and you all, I think, are leading some of the hardest pieces of transformation inside of a utility and have to be customer centric. You're in charge of the customer service organizations and driving this change for the customer. You're the front line. What turbulence could we remove for you, make your life easier in serving the customer? Is there any turbulence that would make it easier?
That's an interesting question. Turbulence. I don't know if it's necessarily a turbulence to remove, but rather, um, at least, and this is from my own personal experience. If we could do a better job of really understanding what our customers want from us, not what we think they want, and not what we want for them, but what they actually want. Because I think when you uncover that, the things we may do might be a little different, right? Or we may message them a lot differently. And I think those are things that we, as utilities, we're like, yeah, they only want a couple of things. Well, actually, no, we're coming into a point in time where customers are expecting a little bit more from us, right? And if we really kind of start to understand what that is at its core, and no, it's not going to be peanut butter spread for everybody. It's not going to be the same across all segments of customers, but really understanding the segments of customers, what they really need. When you unlock that, the value proposition is endless, right? You're able to deliver what they value the most and understand the differences between certain customer segments. So if we can just unlock that, and it's buried in the noise that is the everyday, and buried in the noise that is all of the things that are happening around us, regulation, compliance, all this other things, right? If we can get to that core, that's nirvana for me.
Would agree with what Brandy just said. She's right on, like truly understanding what our customer needs. And then I would add a little bit more, Kim and Lee, like what you're doing. I think this is one of those spaces where it's what the customer wants, but there's a famous saying, and I think it's, if you ask people what they wanted back in the 1800s, they would have said a faster horse when what they really needed was a car. So I think we have to absolutely, Brandy, drive to getting what the customer really wants. But I think at the same time, if someone could help with the turbulence of really helping people understand what is really the right, or what are the true opportunities, or what's the resources that they have to take advantage of, I think that would really be helpful. Or what it even takes to make sure that light switch flips and it goes on. And I think that would be really, really helpful.
It's only one of the greatest inventions of humankind behind that light switch, and only a million things could go wrong. And thank goodness for all the people behind the light switch that are holding it together. So yeah, thanks to you both. And I'll hand it over to Lee for the hot seat.
Hot seat, 30-second answers. I'd like Brandy first on this first one. We've talked about AI. We've talked about the pandemic. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about change. What's the biggest utility challenge over the next 5 years?
Capacity, the challenge with reliability, and meeting those customer expectations, climate change, and I will say workforce.
That's a lot of challenges. Jody.
Meeting our customer demands, they'll continue to evolve.
What are we not talking enough about that we should be talking about?
So I think what we're not talking about is workforce talent. One of the things Brandy just mentioned, I think the skills that are required to deliver on some of the expectations that we're going to need to is something we need to spend more time on, because it is rapidly evolving. And we really need to understand how we're going to meet those expectations that we just talked about with the workforce and the talent that we're going to need to be able to operate.
Brandy, what should we be talking more about?
I have to double down on what Jody said. The changes in the workforce are something that we're seeing right now, that frankly a lot of utilities aren't prepared for. And so we need to spend a lot more time talking about the generational differences, the learning styles differences, those types of things, and how we cultivate that workforce of the future. Because it's going to be a lot different vastly different than it is today.
And Brandy, what about a myth about being a woman leader in the energy industry that you would like to bust?
That you have to be a superwoman and that you have to be perfect 100% of the time.
I think I would like to bust the myth that the numbers are low and that there's not enough of us. I think there are not enough of us, but those that are in the workforce and we're doing it, we're making a big impact. If you look around the industry, you can see it. And so while we want to continue to drive those numbers, just don't underestimate those of us that are delivering every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to both of our guests. And if you found this conversation helpful or inspiring, please tag Innovation Force or Energy Central on LinkedIn, mention Piloting the Future, and share your own bold prediction, idea for a future podcast, or guest. We would love to have them on our show. Tag someone who you think is shaping our new energy future. Also, don't forget to look for Utility 2030. Thank you, Vanessa Edmonds, for putting this together. And thank you for all the great work you're doing at Utility 2030 and inspiring future leaders, women in your leadership collaborative. Get involved. If you women out there that are listening to this want to get involved with what Vanessa's put together on her leadership collaborative, we need you. Apply for Spark. Come in, be a mentor, sponsor a participant for the leadership series that Vanessa's put together at Utility 2030. This is a great way for you to show your support in the energy industry. So thanks, everyone. And Lee, I think we can fasten our seatbelts. This one's coming in for a landing.
I'm buckled up.